Oh, hey there. Welcome in to the Nick Bird Sports Network. It is time for the Groups A and B previews at the 2026 World Cup. Of course, Group A has your host, Mexico. It has the Bafana of South Africa in their first World Cup since 2010 when they hosted. You have South Korea, who can Son Heung-min finally lead this team on a deeper run in the tournament. Got to find that out. And that group is rounded out by Czechia in their first World Cup since 2006. It's hard to believe, but they have made it back to the grandest stage of them all. In Group B, you have host Canada. You have Bosnia and Herzegovina, first World Cup since 2014 for them. You have Qatar in their second ever appearance at the World Cup. Of course, they hosted last time, which got them an automatic qualification. And of course, you have Switzerland. A lot of stuff to get into here, so let's just get straight into it. Welcome in to the Nick Bird Sports Network. Of course, World Cup previews well underway. It is Group A we are starting with today. Of course, we got to start at the beginning. A group just full of interesting potential, I guess I would say. You have some players that potentially are on their last dance, some players that are on their last dance. You have some up-and-comers. You have some returners to the tournament. A lot of stuff to get into, so let's just get straight after it, and let's go to the monitor for Group A. All right, as you see here, this is Group A. As already mentioned, you have co-host Mexico, you have South Africa, you have South Korea, and you have Czechia. Of course, if you look at this, there are three former World Cup hosts in this group. Of course, Mexico have hosted it twice. South Africa hosted in 2010. South Korea co-hosted with Japan in 2002. Czechia is the only one here that has not hosted a World Cup. Both South Korea and South Africa know what Mexico is dealing with here. Of course, Mexico knows what Mexico is dealing with, although it has been since 1986 since they hosted. But let's get into El Tri right here, right now. Of course, Mexico. It is their 18th World Cup appearance. Best result, quarterfinals. Both times they hosted this tournament, 1970 and 1986. You look at their schedule here. They open up with Mexico City on opening day. Of course, that is a repeat of opening day in 2010 in South Africa, when it was South Africa hosting against Mexico. Then on June 18th, they will play against South Korea. They close out the group stage against Czechia here. And the real question going into this is, obviously, Mexico has a decent team. They are not a great team, but they are a decent team. Can they take advantage of that home turf advantage? Now, you do look at something here, and I've seen this mentioned a few places, and I wanted to bring it up. Outside of the games, Mexico has to host in Mexico, and that is basically your Nations League and your World Cup qualifiers. Mexico does not play games in Mexico because those fans turn so fast if things go south. I am wondering if things start getting a little bit questionable here for Mexico, what does that end up turning out like? And could they potentially be hoping that they were playing games in the U.S. instead, where they get a much different reception than they do in Mexico? It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, but let's get into the 26-man squad for Mexico here. Your goalkeepers, Guillermo Ochoa, Raul Rangel, and Carlos Avecto. We'll get into projected starting 11 in a moment, but let's get through the players here, of course. Jesus Gallardo, Cesar Montes, Jorge Sanchez, Johan Vasquez, Israel Reyes, and Mateo Chavez will be your defenders. Of course, you have captain Edson Alvarez leading the midfield, Orbelín Pineda, Roberto Alvarado, Luis Romero, Luis Chavez, Eric Lira, Gilberto Mora, Brian Gutierrez, Obed Vargas, and Alvarado Fidalgo closing out that midfield. And your forwards are Raul Jimenez, Alexis Vega, Santiago Jimenez, Cesar Huerta, Julian Quinzote, Guillermo Martinez, and Armando Gonzalez. Now let's get to that projected starting 11, at least for me. I have Mexico playing a 4-3-3 here, and we are going to start off with the goalkeeper position, and that is Rangel. I know a lot of people want to see Memo Ochoa in a World Cup. It would be his, I believe, 6th, if my math is correct there. I think there's a possibility it happens. I don't think it's going to be in the first game. I think Mexico, obviously, is going to put out a squad to open up the World Cup. I don't think he is an A squad. He's kind of only in this team because of some injuries at the goalkeeper position. And you know what? It's a home World Cup. I believe he's retiring after the World Cup. It's great to see him on a roster, but I think Rangel is the better goalkeeper right now. He's younger. I think he is the future of Mexican goalkeeping. And I think that's why he gets the nod here. If we take a look at that back four, I have Gallardo on the left, Vasquez and Montes in those two center back positions, and Israel Reyes in the right back position. This seems to be consistent with what they've been playing the past few friendlies. I think this is your best four right here, to be honest. It could be a lot better, obviously, but I think this is the best Mexico has to give, at least on the back line right now. We look at that mid three. You have Mora, Alvarez, of course, your captain, and Gutierrez. I don't think there's really any debating this. Potentially Mora would be a debate, but I think he's pretty safe in there. And then your front three are going to be Quinones, Jimenez, and Alvarado. Again, I don't really know if there's much debate there. Those are your players that will be starting for Mexico come the first game against South Africa. Of course, you look at your substitutions. Javier Aguilar, your manager here. It's going to be interesting to see how Mexico plays out, because how are they going to handle that pressure of hosting a World Cup at home? They're going to be in home environments that they kind of don't play in often. How are they going to play into that? I am interested to see how that plays out, because, I mean, this Mexico team should be getting out of this group quite easily. Will they be? I'm not 100% sure, because this is definitely a tough group for Mexico. So with this Mexico team, obviously the 4-3-3, I could see them potentially switching to something else. I don't think they will, though. This has been their bread and butter basically all the friendlies they've played. I think this is what they roll with. And that, I think this is the strongest starting 11 they can put out. So let's move on. South Africa, of course, as was mentioned earlier, the 2010 World Cup host returned to the World Cup for the fourth time. They've never made it out of group. This could be a great opportunity. Obviously, they've only made it three prior times, and that was in 98, 02, and 2010. Currently sitting at 60 in the FIFA rankings. Of course, they have that opening game against Mexico. They then will, in this group, their only game that I believe is outside of Mexico is this South Africa-Czechia game on June 18th, which will be played in Atlanta. And then South Africa closes on June 14th against South Korea. Now, obviously, South Africa back on the international stage for the first time in 16 years. How is that going to play out? It's going to be very interesting to see, because this is a team that hasn't been outstanding when they play in the African Cup of Nations, but they have a potential to shock a few people here. Let's take a look at the squad that has qualified here for the World Cup, picked by the manager of South Africa. Your goalkeepers here are Rowan Williams, Ricardo Gross, and Saifo Kassain. Defenders, Aubrey Modibia, Kulaso Murandu, Nkostiani Sibizdi, and I know I am butchering these. I am sorry to the South African people and any other people I offend during some of these pronunciations. That is on me. I am trying my best. I tried to learn all these pronunciations, but some of them just don't come out. Mizabelki Mozaki, Ime Okan, Samuelke Kabani, Kulamani Nedamarin, Taban Matudi, Kamango Sebele, Bradley Cross, all went through Maliantha in the defender role. Your midfielders are Tabako Moenda, Sapirendo Sio, Tatiane Mabata, Jalen Adams, and then your forwards here are going to be Temba Zwan, Lyle Foster, Evans Magopa, Oswin Apollos, Irakom Raniers, Raboli Motafang, Tabe Mesco, and Chepeng Moremi. Again, I am sorry for all these names that I know I butchered. That is completely on me. Again, trying to learn, sometimes not easy. Let's take a look at your starting 11 here for South Africa. 4-2-3-1, I have them set up in. You have your captain, Williams in net. I believe he is the highest capped player that is qualified for this team, so I very much expect him to be in net. Your back four, Mobita, Mozaki, Okan, and Muandu. I honestly have not seen South Africa play. I will be 100% honest. I looked at some sources that I could find, and this is kind of just the aggregate starting 11 I could come up with. Again, I'm not fully invested deeply into South African football. I cannot wait to see Bafana, though, at the World Cup. Your defensive midfield are Mokenda and Adams. You got to look at your somewhat attacking midfield of Apollos, Mofeng, and Mazeko. And then, of course, at the top in that striker position will be Lyle Foster, the striker for Burnley, who will now obviously be in the championship after relegation. This team led by Hugo Broos, the Belgian. Again, I can't say I know a ton about South African football. And is that on me a little bit? Yes. But I have read a lot of things about this team. It seems like it's not total optimism here, which I get. It's your first time on the international stage in 16 years. But my biggest thing is, I watch the African Cup of Nations. This team hasn't looked phenomenal when they do qualify. And that's the big question mark for me, is obviously, how can this team perform at a top level? They kind of got thrown in a very tough group. If there is a favorite to finish in fourth in this group, I believe it is South Africa, and it's probably by a quite easy margin, sadly. But the Bafana can very much shock anybody at this tournament. I think overall African football is slept on a lot. Now, is South Africa the best representation of that? I don't know yet. We're going to find out, though. But let's move on here. South Korea, your 2002 co-hosts. Of course, they come from the AFC, their 11th World Cup appearance. Best result, that one they hosted in 2002, where they finished in fourth place. If you notice, most caps on this team is Heung-min, 143 caps. Of course, that will go up by at least 3 in this World Cup, if not more. It's going to be quite interesting to see what he can do in potentially his final World Cup. They will open the tournament in the second game of the day, much later on in the day than the first game against Czechia in Guadalajara. They will then play Mexico in Guadalajara on June 18th, and then they close out on June 24th against South Africa in Monterrey. Let's take a look at the squad for South Korea that will be traveling to Mexico. Your goalkeepers, you have Yo Hon Woo, Kim Seong-ju, Sung Bom-kyun. Of course, your defenders are Kim Min-jae, Cho Heung-min, Lee Hang-byum, Kim Tae-young, Park Jin-suk, Lee Ki-hyuk, Lee Tae-suk, Kim Moo-hong, Seo Young-hoo, and Jones Kastrop. Your midfielders, Yang Hyung-yoon, Pyuk Sung-ho, Hwang In-byum, Kim Yin-yu, Bai Young-ho, Yom Young-sui, Hwang Hee-chan, Lee Jeong-jong, Lee Jae-swong, and Lee Kang-in. And your forwards, three forwards here, Oh Hyung-kyo, Sun Heung-min, and Cho Kyo-sung. Interesting mix of players here. Obviously, you have your much experienced players. You look at your Jo Hyung-woo's in goal, your Kim Min-jae's, Hwang Hee-chan's, of course, Sun Heung-min. And I know they have mixed in some youth here as they're kind of trying to develop that next step. My biggest thing, and that's going to be my next point as we move into the tactics and how I think they're going to play out here. The biggest thing I saw looking into the South Korean team coming into this World Cup is there's a lot of questions about tactics. A lot of what I'm seeing is they are questioning if they have tactics. That has been quite the question I've seen a lot in my reading of this South Korean team and how they're going to line up at this World Cup. It seems like we are kind of in a questionable spot right now, at least in that I went with the 3-4-3. Kim Seong-ju, I have starting in net here with a back three in front of him of Lee Ki-hyuk, Kim Min-jae, and Lee Hang-byum. You get to your midfield four, Lee Tae-suk, Park Sung-ho, Hwang In-byum, and Seo Young-woo. And your front three here, Lee Jae-sung, Lee Kang-in, and Sun Heung-min, of course, the captain. Now, the biggest thing I saw here, because I was going to put him in the starting 11, but I couldn't see anybody projecting him to be in the starting 11, and that is Hwang Hee-chan. Honestly, I don't know where he would fit in currently. That is a big question mark. That's obviously a good player coming off the bench. Again, I'm not really sure how this team is going to line up here at the World Cup because, like I said, what I can find from a lot of sources is that this team is kind of just formationless under Hwang Myung-bo, the manager. And that doesn't instill a lot of confidence in me in a team that I'm kind of hoping goes on a little run here for personal reasons, obviously. Sun Heung-min, huge part of Tottenham for so long. I obviously want him, one final run, I want him to go on a run. The question marks here, of course, are the tactics. Are they going to line up in a 4-3-3? Could they potentially line up in a 4-4-2 potentially? Obviously, a 4-3-3. That is the big question here. What are they going to do tactically? I'm not 100% sure. I don't think Hwang Myung-bo is 100% sure either. That's something we're going to find out on opening day of the World Cup. Let's move in. Our final team in Group A, and that is Czechia. As mentioned before, their first World Cup appearance since 2006, which is kind of hard to believe, but it is true. This team sitting 41st in the FIFA rankings right now. Of course, most caps is Petr Cech, the fantastic goalkeeper for Czechia. They finished runners-up twice. Obviously, that was a long, long time ago, 1934 and 1962. But is this a year? Obviously, they get thrown into a group where I think they could be a little bit of a dark horse here. You look at their games, of course, they open up against South Korea. They then play against South Africa on June 18th in that one game that is being played in the United States. And then they close against Mexico. Let's get into your squad that has qualified for the 2026 World Cup. Mate Kovar, Jindřich Sandek, and Lucas Horenik will be your goalkeepers. It should be mentioned that Antonin Kinski, the Tottenham goalkeeper, was apparently selected for this team. Turned it down because he had to have some type of surgery in the offseason. Wanted to be prepared for the Tottenham season coming up next year. You look at your defenders: Vladimir Kofal, Thomas Holz, Ladislav Krejci, David Zima, Jaroslav Zeleny, Javid Jurček, David Doria, Robert Taranik, and Stefan Čaplik. Your midfielders: Tomáš Jutek, Vladimir Diarra, Lucas Provad, Michael Sandek, Pavel Suchuk, Lucas Shrov, Hugo Shurnik, Alexander Shroka, and Denis Wyszynski. Your forwards are Patrick Schick, Adam Holzes, Jan Kucha, Mortimar Chitro, and Tomas Kori. Let's move into their starting 11. This is by far and away a 5-3-2, especially with the amount of defenders they are taking to the World Cup. This is a team that is going to park five at the back. You have Kovar starting in net. I don't really know if there's any question of that right now. From everything I can see, he is basically being guaranteed the net. You look at your back five. You have Zeleny, you have Krejci, your captain, Hranek, Holz, and Kofal. From what I can tell, this is kind of set in stone of what they will be starting here. And I'm not going to doubt it. I'm going to doubt the sources that I have in Czechia, and I'm going to roll with what they tell me. You have Diarra, Suchek, and Provad in the three midfield positions. Your two attackers here are going to be Schick and Sulik. Of course, this team is managed by Miroslav Kolblek. I guess the biggest thing here for Czechia, and it's the big question that I have seen being asked, can this back five hold up? It's a valid question. I think they have the depth to do it. Can they truly hold on, though? That's going to be the real question. Obviously, goalkeeping is a question. Kovar is no Petr Cech, and I don't think anybody should expect him to be a Petr Cech. So it's going to be what it's going to be. And so far, I think this Czech team, they have the opportunity to potentially go on a run here. Are they going to actually? It's really going to depend on where they finish in this group, because of the way, obviously, the third place tiebreaker works out. It's a mess. A lot of it's a mess. It's going to be interesting to see how they play out, though, because I think they are one of the more dark horse teams in this tournament. All right, so Group A preview in the books. Obviously, predictions will be coming in a later episode here once we get much closer to the World Cup. Initial thoughts, though, I mentioned I think South Africa finishes bottom of this group, and I think everything else from there is a toss-up. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to play that out right now. It's going to be quite interesting, I guess, to say the least, of how this plays out, because you look at the games against each other. That first game, the second game technically, that South Korea-Czechia game. That game feels massive already, and that's only the second game of the group stage, and it's the first for those two teams. I do think everybody kind of just makes their rounds kind of against South Africa, and it's going to be the battles against each other of those three, and with obviously most likely three teams advancing from this group. It could be really anybody's game. I do think there's a chance of Mexican disappointment, especially if things start going bad. Obviously, playing at home, much more pressure than, if this tournament was in Spain or something like that. A lot more pressure there for the Mexicans. Going to be quite interesting to see how that one plays out. Let's move to Group 2. Let's move on. Group B, you have of course, another co-host in Canada. You have Bosnia and Herzegovina. You have Qatar. And you have Switzerland. This is quite an interesting group. This is our first group with two teams from Europe and UEFA. But of course, the big headliner here is your hosts, Canada. How is this going to play out? A team that is still looking for their first World Cup point. They got their first World Cup goal in the last World Cup, but still are looking for that first point as they've lost all 6 World Cup games they have played in. So let's get after it here. Group B, we'll start off, of course, with the hosts, Canada. Third World Cup appearance. Haven't made it out of the group stage because they have not got a single point. You look at their top scorer, of course, Jonathan David, in this squad, going to play a major factor in how Canada does at this tournament. We're going to get into it when we get into the squad and stuff, but major injury problems kind of already for Canada. You look at their opening game, it will be the day after Mexico opens the World Cup. They will be hosting Bosnia and Herzegovina in Toronto. They then will travel to the West Coast to take on Qatar in Vancouver. And they close out against Switzerland in the same BC place in Vancouver. Let's take a look at this squad. And like I mentioned, there are a lot of questions here. Goalkeepers, no surprise of the two that are there. Dane St. Clair, Maxim Krejpol, and then Owen Goodman. Owen Goodman is your third goalkeeper. The debate is who starts between the other two. That's something we will get into in a minute here. Alistair Johnson, Luc Deforest, Alfie Jones, Joe Waterman, Derek Cornelius, Mose Bambito, Alphonso Davies, Richie Larea, and Nico Sigor. Defenders. Now, this is where the injury question comes in. Alphonso Davies, the captain, he's been on and off injured with Bayern Munich for what feels like the past 4 months. He's already come out to the media saying he will not be healthy for the game against Bosnia. That doesn't instill confidence in me that he's going to be healthy at all this tournament. I get why he's obviously in the squad. He is the captain. But at this point, you're really questioning how much of an effect is he going to have on this team. I'm not 100% sure how much of an effect he's going to have on this team. And the injuries only get worse from there. I know Bambito went off injured yesterday in the friendly, and they said he went off at his normal time. He was limping off the field against Uzbekistan in Edmonton. Obviously, a question there. You look at your midfielders, Matteo Corrillo, Stefan Isquato, Ismail Kone, Liam Miller, Jacob Schaffelberg, Tejan Buchanan, Ali Ahmed, Jonathan Osorio, Nathan Saliba, and you see crossed out there is Marcelo Flores. Injured in the CONCACAF Champions Cup final on Saturday night, torn ACL. He is out for the World Cup. As of now, no replacement has been named, which is interesting to say the least. I get that it happened quickly, but I figured head coach Jesse Marsch would kind of have an replacement already in place, but apparently not. Your forwards, Kyle Larin, Jonathan David, Taneo Swani, and Promise David. Promise David is another one of those question marks for Canada at this tournament. He has been injured for the past 3 or 4 months, and I don't think he's played since January or February, something like that, for Union Saint-Gilles-Lausanne in Belgium. This is a team that could very much get caught out because although this group kind of looks easy on paper, I don't think it's going to be as easy for the Canadians. Obviously, a team still looking for their first World Cup win, first World Cup point. Going to be some major questions there. Jesse Marsch, I have him lining up a 4-4-2. One of the biggest questions right now is who's starting in goal. I have Maxime Crépeau. I think he's just the better keeper. I get Dane St. Clair is very good. Both have had kind of similar seasons this year. No one person has run away from the other, which is a little bit worrying if you ask me. But I do have Crépeau starting in net. You look at your back four here. I have Richie Labrea, Cornelius Bombito, and Alistair Johnson, of course. Obviously, the big question here is Alphonso Davies. I don't have him starting. I have Richie Labrea starting instead. Mostly because, like I mentioned, obviously he's not playing that first game against Bosnia and Herzegovina. I don't know if he's going to be healthy at all this tournament. That is a massive question for Canada. Obviously, Moses Bombito, if he truly is injured, that becomes a question there. But as of now, I have him starting alongside, of course, Cornelius, and then Alistair Johnson on the right. I think he is pretty solidified there. Your midfield for Ali Ahmed, Ismail Kone, Stephen Osquanto, and Tejan Buchanan. And of course, your front two, I believe, are going to be Kyle Larin, who had a great second half of the season at Southampton before things went south in the playoffs because of, cheating and spying and all that stuff, and then not getting the opportunity to play in a playoff final against Hull City. And Jonathan David, of course, your top goal scorer for Canada. I don't think there's any doubt that he won't be starting for Canada here. Of course, this team managed by Jesse Marsch. Like I said, for Canada, the biggest question here is going to be health. And it's so tough. It's so tough that this team, coming into a World Cup on home soil, and you have so many questions already at so many positions. Obviously, goalkeeper, nobody's really run away from each other. All the injury problems, your captain may not play a game at a World Cup that you are hosting. That is a massive issue. The only thing I don't think truly is questionable right now about this Canada team is the front two of Kyle Larin and Jonathan David. I think both are kind of pretty set. They're pretty in form. I know David hasn't been in the greatest of form, but I think both are quite better than the other options. I don't think there's going to be much question there. Let's move on here to Bosnia and Herzegovina. Of course, their second time in the World Cup. They were last here in 2014, where they were led by Edin Dzeko, who could not lead them out of the group stage. Well, folks, I got some news for you. Edin Dzeko is still leading this Bosnia and Herzegovina team. Led them through the playoffs, which of course ended in a penalty shootout victory against Italy back in March to qualify for the World Cup. He's still their most capped player at 148. That, of course, will go up at least 3 with this tournament injured. He is the top scorer for Bosnia. Of course, he is at 73. His team obviously opens up against Canada and Toronto. Then they travel out to LA to take on Switzerland. Kind of interesting that they'll be playing at SoFi. That just feels odd for a game like Bosnia and Herzegovina against Switzerland. And then they close out in Seattle against Qatar. this is an interesting team because this is a team that, wasn't supposed to be here. Everybody thought, it's kind of a walkthrough for the Italians. The Italians are going to make it here. Well, Bosnia said, we got other plans. They took out Wales in the semifinal in a playoff, or in a penalty shootout, I should say. Then they took out Italy in a penalty shootout in the playoff. This team has the opportunity to stun a few people here at the World Cup. Let's take a look at the squad for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Nikola Vazic, Martin Zolominski, and Osman Hazidic are your goalkeepers. Sneed Kozanak, Denis Hazanuk, Amir Derek, Nikola Takic, Tariq Muravokic, Navad Murzukic, Stefan Rajidic, Nidal Selek are your defenders. Midfielders Amir Hazamaluik, Benjamin Talvovic, Elmarin Zhivovic, Denzin Burnik, Ivan Bastik, Izmir Vatovic, Amir Memik, Ivan Sonchik, Kemim Ezaboje, and Iram Manomik, and your forwards, of course, Edin Dzeko, Irmin Demirovic, Samid Bazar, Haris Taboic, and Joko Vukic. Let's take a look at what I have set up as a 4-4-2. This is what they used in the playoffs. I expect them to use it again. I have Vlasic starting in net. He feels like the starter here. For the, of course, Bosnians had that game, of course, against Italy. Penalty shootout. No other things need to be said. Kosalanik, Muravovic, Katic, and Dedic will be your defensive four. Your midfield four, Edjabolovic, Tavovic, Suvik, and Memik. And, of course, your front two, Njako and Demirovic. This is a team led by Sergei Barbares. I don't know if I have much more on the Bosnians, to be honest. I've obviously seen their two games in the playoffs against Wales and against Italy. Both went to a penalty shootout. These are two very defensive teams. I should say they are a defensive team, forcing both Wales and Italy to become more defensive teams in those playoffs. They like to grind out games. They're going to draw games. That's what they're going to do. They may sneak out a victory. Their points are going to come from draws. If they draw all three games, I wouldn't be surprised, just because that is the way they play. It's not a beautiful way to play, but it's how they play. It's going to be interesting to see how they play out. Let's take a look, of course, at the 2022 World Cup host, and that is Qatar. They've qualified on merit this time. The first time they have done that. I obviously shouldn't be, mocking them. This is a team that they made it. They made it to a World Cup. Congratulations to them. Things could obviously go quite bad here. And who knows? Maybe they shock somebody. It cannot possibly go worse than what they did at the World Cup that they hosted. That's the big thing here. They'll open June 12th against Switzerland. June 18th, they'll be playing Canada and Vancouver. And then they close out in Seattle against Bosnia and Herzegovina on June 24th. Going to be quite interesting to watch this team, because I don't think anything... I don't know. Truly, I think we could see a little bit of a repeat of what we saw in 2022. Let's take a look at this team. This is a team, just to be honest, this is a team full of players from Qatar that play in the Qatari Stars League. I'm not going to know a ton of these players. I'm being 100% honest with you here, so we're going to probably be a little bit quick here. Mahmoud Abunda, Salazaria, Meshal Barsham are your goalkeepers. Your defenders are Izalain, Ayoub Aou, Sultan Al-Bak, Al-Hamani Al-Hussan, Lucas Mendez, Pedro Miguel, Homan Ahmed, who is the only player that does not play for a Qatar team on this Qatar team. He plays in Spain. Bulem Kuranki are your defenders. Midfielders Ahmed Fahati, Asim Madabo, Mohamed Al-Maani, Jasmine Gaber, and Karim Boudaf. Your forwards Edmison Jr., Talisman Jamed Ahmed Al-Ghani, Yosef Adberings, Ahmed Aladdin, Mohamed Mutari, Akram Afif, Hassan Al-Haedos, and Alamez Ali. Those three names, of course, are big names you will remember from the 2022 World Cup. You take a look here at this starting 11. 4-2-3-1. Abasham starting in net. Albrak, Kulumi, Miguel, and Aoudi are your defensive four. Your defensive midfield are Budaf and Madabayo. Your three attacking midfielders, Al-Malani, Al-Haedos, and Edmilson Jr., with your one striker being, of course, Ali. Like I said, I don't really know if I have much for you past what I have here. Just that is complete honesty. The last time I watched Qatar play was in the World Cup in 2022. It was a disastrous experience, to say the least. I don't know what else I can say about this team. I know I'm bringing you the preview, so I should know a lot more about this team. I'm not expecting a lot from this team. Just kind of like South Africa, I'm expecting them to finish bottom. Everything else is a question mark here. We'll move in to our final team we will be previewing tonight, and that is Switzerland, who close out Group B. Coming from UEFA, 13 appearances in the World Cup. Their best result has been in the quarterfinals in 1934, 38, and 54. Granit Xhaka, most caps, 145. That will, of course, go up by at least 3 in this tournament, most likely, given I do have him as a starter, spoiler alert, because he is just come with a late career renaissance. Let's take a look at Switzerland here. You have Gregor Kobel, Yvonne Mongo, and Marvin Kelleher as your goalkeepers. Your defenders, Miro Muheim, Sylvain Wender, Nico Ivaldi, Manuel Kanji, Ricardo Rodriguez, Ere Come, Arule Amanda, Luca Jacques. Your midfielders are Dennis Zakira, Remo Fuller, Johan Manzabai, of course, Granit Xhaka, the captain, Arden Jari, Djibrijiso, Christian Fashinet, Michel Abdir, and Fabian Ryder. Briel Mbolo starts off your forwards, Dan Ndole, Ruben Vargas, Noah Okafor, Zeki Amundi, and Cedric Etienne close out that 16 or 26-man roster, I should say. 4-3-3, very basic for Switzerland here. Gregor Kobel starts in net. Ricardo Rodriguez, Manuela Kenji, Nathan Ivaldi, and Fabian Winder are your 4 defenders. In your midfield 3, of course, you have Granit Xhaka, Fabian Ryder, and Remo Fuller. Again, this is a very heavy, European top 5 division starting lineup here. And your attacking 3 are Briel Mbolo, Denan Doyle, and Ruben Vargas. This team led by Murat Yakin. He has felt like he's led this Switzerland team forever. And is this his last dance? That's another question here, of course. What is in his future? That's a major question. But he has led this Switzerland team all over the place. Euros, World Cups. What can he do for at least one more World Cup? So that is Group B for this tournament. Early thoughts, Qatar finished 4th. I think that's pretty simple. Second thought, I think the winner of this group is one of the two European sides. And I think second in this group is the other European side. I do think Canada finished third as of now because of all those injury problems. Going to be very interested to see how that plays out for them. And I think the most important game in this group is the Bosnia Herzegovina versus Switzerland game in that second group day for Group B. I know a lot of people said, no, it's Canada-Switzerland. It's the final game of the group stage. That's the biggest game. I don't think so, because if there is a winner in that game between Bosnia and Switzerland, that team is going to win the group. I truly do believe that. So it's a toss-up as of now, but I do give the slight advantage as of now to the two European sides. So that is going to wrap it up for the Group A and B preview of World Cup 2026. Of course, a lot more is coming. Tomorrow it will be Groups C and D, and then it will be E and F, and you can figure out the math past there. So make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, tell anybody you know about it. We'll be back here tomorrow. We'll be doing the same thing over again. Group C and D, a lot more interesting things happening there. I can't wait to see what's going to happen. So thank you so much for watching this episode of, well, it's not so quick kick around the pitches. We're right around the 52-minute mark. So make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe on the Nick Bird Sports Network. We'll be coming at you with a lot more content here. So thank you so much for watching. We will see you again soon for another episode of Quick Kick Around the Pitch for World Cup 2026.